Hello, Alexander and Danielle. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Fine, thank you.
So you have a very interesting duo with a long history, over 2 decades of recording, touring, releasing albums. Hacked Epicciotto. Hopefully, I'm saying that correctly. If not, correct me. And you've been recording. I think you have. I think it was 5 albums, but I could be wrong. But I know we have a new album coming out on November 1st, and it's very interesting music. How did you guys first meet, and how did this duo kind of get created?
Well, we met in 1987,
Long time ago.
long time ago, and we became friends, and we really started, you know, dating, going out, working together in 2001. So we have a long history of friendship and over 20-year-old history of working together and being a couple.
Awesome. And Danielle, where are you from originally?
I was born in Tacoma.
Ah,
I grew up in New York City, and I moved to Berlin in 1987.
awesome. And then Alexander, you were born in, I guess, German, born in Berlin. Is that kind of true? Or
Yeah, I was born in West Berlin, a city that doesn't exist anymore.
true? Yeah, you were born into a whole different era.
Yep.
Yeah. So there must have been actually, I would think back then when things were sort of beginning to change a little bit, it must have been very exciting musically, a lot happening.
Changing, what do you mean when the wall came down? When
Well, obviously that, yeah, and I guess this happened. Obviously, you were there, you were born when that was still in place, and it must have been interesting times. And how did you, when you started into music, was there a lot of a very vibrant scene, or was it just beginning?
Yeah, there was a very vibrant but very small and close-knit scene because West Berlin was this island pretty much, and there was a great sense of solidarity and people helping each other out. There was a lot less competition as we have it now since the wall came down.
Hmm. And then tell me the group. I know you've been with a very well-known group since 1980. Tell me the name of that group because I won't say it correctly. Let me know.
In
Yeah, go ahead.
Einstürzende Neubauten.
Okay. Yeah. See, I would have totally messed it up. So I know that's a very well-known group, and also Daniela, you've actually Danielle, you've been from several well-known groups as well. What were some of those groups that you worked with?
Well, I was singer of the Space Cowboys. I worked together with Gudrun Gut in her band Monika Werkstatt. I was part of the Crime in the City Solution latest, well, actually the lineup of 2012. Yeah, and I kind of co-created the Love Parade, the Berlin Love Parade. So
Right, I saw that. So that's interesting. And Germany is interesting. There's a lot of happening musically, and people don't really, maybe outside of Germany, don't realize how large the music scene is there. It's actually one of the largest in the world. So it's quite vibrant. And then this kind of the music that you're doing, how would you describe it? What would be the style, that the term you would use?
well, I mean, we come from very different directions. Alexander comes from the experimental music scene from Berlin, and he started out doing tape loops very early on with actually 14 years. And I actually had a classical upbringing. I learned piano and violin very early on. And then when I came to Berlin, I got into the electronic music scene.
Hmm.
So when we got together, we kind of had to figure out how those different music styles would fit together. And at the begin, we worked on it for quite some time. We took about, I don't know, I guess 5, 6 years until we found what would work best. And actually, it was just each one of us doing what he or she can do best, and it somehow magically fit. So it's kind of a mixture of Alexander's experimental and quite loud percussion and bass riffs, right? And my kind of like melodic violin and auto harp and hurdy-gurdy melodies. And we sing together in harmony. And Alex likes being loud. I like being quiet. So we're kind of like the exact opposite. And for some
Yeah.
really strange reason, it worked out.
Yeah, it works really well. What would you say, each one of you, what is some of your influences growing up that really inspired you musically?
Me, I learned English with the Ramones, and my world changed when I first heard Suicide, and it's a lot of American music actually, but then also like the weird independent music scene of the early 80s, Throbbing Gristle, the Nihilist Spasm Band from Canada, um, the Plastic People of the Universe from the Czech Republic, and just basically weirdness what I was drawn to.
Yeah, it's weird, but it's interesting. And I think, Americans tend to focus on American bands. And of course, we all know of the big European bands, but it's fun to hear people's influences because maybe people can go check that out and kind of see what that music sounded like. Danielle, what was your really big influences growing up?
Well, my first big influences were classic musicians and classic composers, but modern ones like Avo Pat, who is from what is the country he's from?
Latvia.
Latvia.
Ah, yeah.
Loved him. But my very first influence was Ennio Morricone because I used to watch all the old westerns with Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood was my big first love, and the music to those movies was my first influence. So you can find a lot of those influences in our music. And
Yeah,
then kind of fell in love with Scott Walker as soon as he started going strange, and I realized that I really like strange sounds too, strange instruments. So that kind of was my influence.
Yeah, and I think, with your music, it's really interesting because you kind of hear all that. And I know you're playing multiple instruments, and then the vocals are actually very lush and orchestral. So it's really fun to hear. And tell me about this album, The Best of Hackedepicciotto. Hopefully, I'm saying that correctly. Live in Napoli. So tell me how you recorded that because it's at one of the oldest studios in Europe, correct?
Yeah, well, after the pandemic, when we started touring again, the first show that we did actually after being locked down for almost 2 years in our studio was in Napoli. And as we entered the room and did a sound check there, we realized this is not just a concert venue, this is actually a recording studio and a very beautiful at one at that. And so we asked and whether they were still functioning also as a recording studio, and they were, and they had all
Ah,
this like nice analog equipment, but also like state-of-the-art digital workstations and all that. So we decided to come back. That was in March. We decided to come back in the winter to record our next album there. Then when we did that next album, the year after that, we came back there to again play a show with that album. And both of these shows were also recorded. And so we decided this is a very good
Cross selection.
cross selection of
All our albums.
all our albums, and also this is just such a wonderful room and a very wonderful space to do this kind of endeavor.
that like an inspiring space. So,
Absolutely.
and how many albums do you have, including this one?
Well, we have five, and then we have two, which is with the meditation albums, right? So it's seven. And then we have a couple of collaborations. So about 10.
And how is the collaboration? How important is that for you? Do you working with other artists, other musicians? Do you find that inspiring?
Yeah, we love it. I mean, it's really difficult touring with a lot of musicians nowadays. Otherwise, we would have added more musicians to the band, basically. But we do collaborations as often as we can. Like often we do improv sessions with musicians somewhere if we're traveling, and then we kind of look what ended up on the recording, and if it's good, then we just release that. So we try to collaborate as much as possible.
Yeah, it's fun and you can always get new ideas and inspiration, I think. And this album you're actually going to release vinyl. Is that going to be only vinyl or how you, but also
No,
online, of course.
no, we're going to do a limited edition run of 500 vinyl,
Yeah.
and then also there's obviously the digital releases.
Yes, it seems to be today that the digital release is kind of not necessarily the important one, but it's something that everybody has to do, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time and age. It's a society of access, not, you don't want to own things, because if you own things, you have to put them in storage, even if it's digital storage. So now you just purchase access to.
Yeah, this is true. And you guys are always touring, it seems. When did you first start touring? Was it back when you were first started releasing, or How many years has it been? Almost over
Our
2 decades.
our first collaboration, real collaboration, was actually in 2001 when Alex was working on a solo album, and he was going from city to city and recording people there on songs that he had written. It was his album called Sanctuary.
Ah,
And so he basically did an album that was a tour within itself. So there were all kinds of American musicians on it or international musicians on it. And I was filming everything because I'm also a visual artist and doing the artwork and stuff like that. So basically, that's when we started touring and traveling together, and it kind of never stopped.
yeah. Well, it's good. It's always fun and it's fun to get the interaction from people and have them get the feedback from your music, I think, too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
awesome. Go ahead. And also too, and I was checking out your social media pages. You're on Instagram and all the usual places. How important has that been to reach your fans and for people to discover your music?
Well, I mean, nowadays as a musician, you have to do that, right? I mean, we're going to go on tour tomorrow, and all the promoters are saying, please post our Facebook event ads and the Instagram things because they hope to get more people coming if the artists do it themselves. It's kind of exhausting because you have to do all of that and rehearse and write the music and do the artwork and all that. So it's kind of like a 24-hour job, but I guess it's part of it nowadays.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, nowadays it's not it's more of the question if you are actually still a real person and not just a bot, because you have to do so many things digitally that you could be non-existent in the physical realm.
yeah, you could be an AI generation, right? Yeah, that's interesting because I mean, many people have been getting signed or have become famous on TikTok, on Instagram, these different social outlets. Then you kind of wonder if they're going to be able to actually perform live. You kind of wonder that. But to me,
And
that's
some
kind
of
of the point. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and some of them actually can't. I
Yeah,
mean,
I know. Yeah,
yeah.
but that's what's nice about you guys too, and I like the fact that you have a lot of live videos out there, which is important.
Thanks. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a visual artist, so I like doing videos too. And it's just a nice way of advertising something in comparison to like, just some kind of post.
Right. And has touring, so you have kind of, I mean, I know for me personally, I'm also a musician, I'm a bass player. There's kind of pre-COVID touring and then touring after COVID. Have you guys noticed a big difference in how things are as far as clubs and venues and
Well, in Berlin after the pandemic, everyone was just like getting pretty cranky and fuzzy that the concerts would actually start on time. In Berlin, it would, like a concert would be announced at 10 o'clock and then not start before midnight. And
Mhm.
Before the pandemic.
before the pandemic. And at
Yeah.
the pandemic, afterwards, everything would actually start on time and the audience would get there and say like, hey, I'm only 2 hours late. Why is it already over?
Yeah, that seems to be but like I say in Finland, it was kind of the same thing. It's like, it starts around 8, but not really, kind of different. Um,
Yeah.
what's for both of you, because you have such a vast amount of experience touring and recording, what's your advice for young artists? Like what would be some of the things that you've learned that you'd really like to let them know?
Well, if you don't want to work 24 hours a day for very little money, don't do it.
Well, yeah. And Frederick, or I'm sorry, Alexander, and also, what would be some of your advice with all of your experience?
Um, well, yeah, it's pretty much along the same lines. It's if you, I mean, if you don't mean it, and if you're not willing to actually fight for your vision,
Mm,
there is, if you compromise, there is disappointment in store for you. The and on the other hand, it's a struggle to get your vision across and to stay with integrity and authenticity, true to yourself. It's going to be hard, but it's also rewarding.
yeah, I always say it's sort of the thing where nobody can stop you from doing it. That's the only time you probably should do it.
Yeah, and also,
Yeah. Yeah.
also, when you realize that you don't have a choice, but to be creative, then you're on the right track, I guess.
Yeah, you're kind of born for this life, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that one.
Yeah.
How can people find you online and also your touring schedule and all that stuff?
Well, we're on Facebook under Hackedepicciotto, and we've got a web page, homepage. We're under Hackedepicciotto.
www.hackedepicciotto.de, and then we're also on Bandcamp. You can listen to our entire back catalog together and individually on our Bandcamp page.
And the good thing is also that you can order on our Bandcamp for US orders. There's a link to US distribution. So you don't have to pay all those extremely high postal costs from Europe.
Awesome. Yeah. And people, and also too, people are loving vinyl these days, right?
Yeah. Which is nice because it's fun to design vinyl too.
Yeah, it's like, it reminds me of, I remember as a kid when I had my first like Kiss album, and you open it up and it's all the photos and the lyrics, and it's an exciting thing to have in your hands. So
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I really love the music. I found it very interesting and fascinating. And I know it took a lot of work to make the songs, get them recorded, and with all the music and the vocals. So I very much appreciate what you guys do.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank God the music always gives you so much that it makes it all worth it, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it touches people's hearts, and that's important.
That's where it's at.
Yeah.
Awesome. So everybody, please check out the new album, The Best of Hackedepicciotto. I know I'm not saying that exactly right.
Live you're doing well. Hackedepicciotto. You're doing it good.
Yeah, it sounds better when you say it. But I'll have all your links in the podcast description with the website and everything else, so people can find you. I want them to discover your music and check it out. Thank you so much for taking the time. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I really, really appreciate it.
Viva Las Vegas.
Hey, there you go. Cool. Hopefully I'll see you guys in Europe sometime.
Yeah, alrighty. That'd be great.
All right. Awesome, guys. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Now, bye.